His wife was being bothered by a harasser on the bus, but her husband pretended not to see. Even when she looked at him pleadingly for help, he emotionlessly turned his head away. Fortunately, a brave woman behind them intervened and stopped the criminal, and the police soon arrived to take everyone away. As he watched his wife leave, the man silently wished her well. She had traveled from 10 years in the past. It was her act of defending a girl back then that had led to their meeting, falling in love, and starting a family. But their marriage had been unhappy, and this time he chose not to get involved, letting them both be free. Then he took a taxi to a concert for a date with the school beauty, dreaming that perhaps the girl he had missed in his previous life was his true soulmate. He wasn't being cruel. His marriage had just been too painful. That day, she and her husband were at the supermarket waiting in line to check out. Just as it was almost their turn, Zui suddenly remembered he had forgotten to buy a t-shirt and said he'd just grab it, but his wife Yusin told him to leave it for next time since it was almost their turn, and they still had to pick up their child, Ju. He said he'd be back soon and ran off despite her stopping him. When it was her turn, she kept looking back but didn't see him return, so she let others go ahead and moved to the back of the line, frustrated and red-faced at how Zuhei always caused trouble. Just then, he ran back full of excitement like a happy child, completely unaware that Yujin's temper was about to explode. She scolded him with curses so loudly that the whole supermarket was stunned. That night, unable to release his anger, Juhi went to the storage room, cursing Eugene nonstop, calling her a terrible woman and blaming himself for marrying her in the first place. He went into his simple gaming room hoping to relax, but the old console took half an hour just to start, which made him completely break down. He felt helpless and pathetic, wondering which man lived such a miserable life. He missed his first love, gentle and beautiful, and thought if only he hadn't missed out on her back then, maybe his life wouldn't be this awful. The next day after work, he sneakily moved like a spy, exchanged coded messages, and began the deal. He couldn't wait to open the bag, and when he did, the game console looked as good as new. He was thrilled. The seller said it was brand new, but his wife forced him to get rid of it or she'd divorce him, feeling they shared the same fate. Jui promised to cherish it. That night, while his wife was asleep, he eagerly tested it out. The smooth power-up made him ecstatic, even though he only had half an hour and had to stay alert for Eugene's sudden sneak attacks. But he was satisfied. He hid the console deep inside the cabinet and covered it with a pack of diapers. But the next day, while Eugene was reaching for a diaper, she found a plastic bag inside, which was the game console. Anger surged through her as fire filled her eyes. That night, unaware of anything, Juhei returned to the storage room and instantly felt something was wrong when he saw a black plastic bag on the floor. His game console was missing. He rushed to find his wife, who was bathing the console in water. He leapt forward and rescued it, shouting if she was insane. She fired back, asking what was the point of buying this junk. Even though he explained it was the one he bought during school and it was broken, she yelled that if it's broken, don't play it. He finally lost it and told her that he had saved up tiny bits of pocket money over years just to buy himself one thing. Was that too much to ask? He said coming home was more exhausting than work, and couldn't he at least have one thing to keep himself going? Hearing her husband's long-held frustration, Yusin got even angrier. Her mom was sick and she couldn't even afford the monthly hospital fee of $1.2 million, yet he could drop $400,000 on a game console for fun. Not only that, but just a few days ago, he missed a promotion because of it. Turns out that day to leave work early and make the deal, he had broken the rules and pushed a client's paperwork through, which later got caught in audit. The entire branch lost points, and HR stayed silent. She yelled again, pulled off a crab's claw, and threw it at him, scratching his face. After a round of yelling and beating, Jay was kicked out of the house. As he cried about his misery, his friend could only comfort him, saying he had to hang in there. Life was hard, but it had to go on. The next day at the bank, the manager said their performance was down and told Ju and others to go pass out flyers. His coworkers kept grabbing all the good spots, which annoyed him, so he went into an office building instead. A security guard came over to stop him, and they were arguing when a sweet voice called his name. It was Hu Yuan, the school beauty he had once chased in college. Even after all these years, she still looked young and beautiful. They went to a restaurant to catch up. She remembered how he loved meat, and even gave him the meat from her own bowl. Ju was touched. It had been so long since anyone cared for him like that. Hui Wan said she returned from abroad because she missed home and friends and sometimes even thought about old classmates. Hearing this made Juve nearly choke. She went on to say she heard from classmates that he was very capable, had a beautiful wife, and she even felt excited hearing that. After leaving the restaurant, Z was completely dazed the whole day, like he'd lost his soul, unable to focus on work, thinking only about who he confessing to him. He couldn't believe the girl he had longed for back then had actually liked him too. On the subway home, Ji saw an old man suddenly faint, and everyone panicked and backed away. But Jay rushed forward and helped him up without hesitation. The old man, without saying a word, handed him 2 coins, and walked away. Joo-hee was speechless. Was this some kind of revenge? Looking closely, he saw they were 2 500W coins from 2006. The rare coin was something he didn't want to waste, so he kept it safely. But that night, wanting to get home early, Joo-hee took a quiet side street. Although he didn't use it often, he was sure there had never been a toll station there before. Confused, he slowed down only to find a gate blocking the way and demanding 500 W to pass. Complaining as he searched his pockets, he threw in 5,100 WN bills one after another, but the barrier didn't budge. Frustrated, he shouted for help, but the area was completely deserted. Left with no choice, Joo pulled out a single rare coin, the one an old man had given him on the subway years ago, minted in 2006, and tossed it in. The light turned green. Finally, he could go. But soon after, the road felt unfamiliar, and then his navigation failed. The car began accelerating on its own. Panicking, he stomped on the brakes again and again, but nothing worked. The speed climbed higher and higher until it hit 200 km/h, and in a flash, the car vanished into the night. When he woke up, he thought he was in a hospital, but when he sat up and looked around, it was actually the rental apartment he had lived in during college. Then he looked at the calendar. It was June 2006. Had he traveled through time? Dazed, he stepped outside and found himself back at the university. The school broadcast was counting down to the college entrance exams, and the newspaper headlines read that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie had just gotten married. This was the exact day he had gone on a date with the campus goddess 12 years ago. And right on cue, she appeared just as gentle and beautiful as before, like an angel. She asked him again to go to a concert that night, just like back then. And in that moment, Joo-hee finally realized that she really did like him all those years ago. Without hesitation, he gave up his terrifying wife from the previous life and chose the campus goddess instead. Because the past had changed, Joo woke up again and found himself back in the present 12 years later, but now on the other side of the city. His wife from the previous life, the yellow-faced, bitter woman, had become a bright, independent urban beauty, and the two of them would now live completely separate lives. Lying beside the soft, lazy campus goddess, Joo-hee still couldn't fully believe this was real, but the surprises didn't stop there. A big, bright villa, an elegant wife cooking breakfast in the kitchen, and even his favorite video game console. Now he could play while lying down. It was all like a dream. Out of habit, he politely asked his wife for permission to play games, but she seemed oddly cheerful today, even making him breakfast, something he never had in his past life. The simple joy of being called husband made him giddy, and just as he was heading out for work, she teasingly scolded him. With a luxury villa, there was, of course, a luxury car too, and Joo jumped with excitement. Despite all this, he was still just an ordinary bank employee, and, as usual, was running late for work. To cover for himself, he lied about a car accident on the way, but instead of scolding him, his boss gasped in concern, asking if he was okay and even helped wipe his sweat. Joo was stunned. Back at his desk, a coworker muttered how lucky he was to have such a wealthy father-in-law. Even being late didn't matter. This made Joo curious, so he secretly searched for information about his father-in-law, and what he found shocked him. The man was a powerful tycoon. He had married into a wealthy family. No wonder everyone's attitude had changed. He jumped with joy, feeling like life had reached its peak. Everything looked beautiful and perfect. And then that evening, he came home to find his stunning wife in a bathrobe. Looking like a goddess made of ice and jade, he was completely entranced and hurried to take a bath before climbing into bed, nervously waiting like a shy bride. After over a decade of marriage, this sudden sweetness made her even more interested. But the next day, a new colleague arrived at the bank. The manager introduced her to everyone, and as Joo and his loyal friend Jang Ho tried to catch a glimpse, the woman turned around and Joo was utterly shocked. It was his ex-wife from his previous life, Eugene. All the horrible memories rushed back, and in panic, he accidentally discharged the pepper spray in his hand, creating chaos. Even though he had erased their marriage in this new timeline, fate had brought them together again, this time as co-workers. Seeing the now beautiful and confident Yoo-jeon, Joo tried to hide his fear and politely greeted her, asking if they had met before. As she stepped closer, his heart pounded. He was sure she had recognized him, but all she wanted was to say hello. From then on, Joo lived in constant anxiety, always worrying she might recall who he really was. He began thinking of quitting. At home, he asked his wife if his father-in-law's company had a position he could take instead, but her reply crushed him. The father-in-law had always wanted him to work at the company, yet Joo insisted on climbing the ranks on his own and had boldly promised to one day become a branch manager. Now that he couldn't back out of that promise, Joo decided he had to find a way to make Yusun quit. He first pretended to care, telling her that the department was tough on new hires and maybe she should apply to headquarters instead, but she said she really liked it here and thanked him before walking away. Realizing gentle words wouldn't work, Joo chose a harsher approach, picking on her for minor things. His sudden outburst startled everyone, and even the supervisor rushed to hide the extra printed papers. But despite the bullying, Eugene never once mentioned quitting. In fact, she worked even harder. One day, while eating breakfast by the roadside with John Ho, they saw Eugene pass by. John Ho called out to her, and during their chat, she revealed that she had taken this job to take care of her sick mother. Hearing this, Zuhei grew uneasy. Though they had many arguments in their past life, his mother-in-law had always treated him well. Back when he was a poor nobody, she had still agreed to marry her daughter to him. That night, unable to calm his heart, he went to Eugene's home, hoping to learn more about her mother's illness. He paced outside for a long time, unsure of how to approach. Just then, Eugene returned from grocery shopping and found him standing there. When she asked what he was doing, Ju awkwardly said a friend lived nearby and he was just visiting. Clearly unconvinced, Eugene blocked his path and said something unexpected. She'd been having the same dream every night. In the dream, she was wearing a wedding dress and walking down the aisle with a man, but she could never see the man's face. And every time she woke up, she felt an overwhelming sadness. The moment she saw Juo, she felt a strange familiarity, like he was the husband from her dreams. And to clear the confusion in her heart, Eugene directly asked Juo if they had met before. Why? She felt a strange sense of family when she looked at him. And just as Juo was struggling to answer, Eugenie's mother came out of the house and suddenly called Juo her son-in-law. Juo was stunned that his mother-in-law still remembered him, making him wonder, had he also time-traveled? While he was still puzzled, Eugene felt extremely awkward and quickly told her mother that Ju Huo was just a colleague from her company, but her mother was convinced he was her son-in-law and even scolded Eugene. Then she insisted on dragging Zhu Huo inside the house without giving anyone a chance to object, leaving Zhu Huo no choice but to awkwardly follow her in. Inside, he noticed that the house's layout and furniture were exactly the same as he remembered, and Yusen hurried to apologize, explaining that her mother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's recently, and her condition made her often confuse people in situations. Like just now when she thought her daughter was already married and mistook Juo for her son-in-law. Seeing her mother rummaging through the kitchen, Eugene pulled Juo aside and tried to sneak him out, but he asked when the illness had started. Yusin replied it had been more than a year, starting with minor forgetfulness, which worsened over time to the point where her mom sometimes even called her aunt and would frequently wander off, making everyone anxious. At that moment, her mother came out with a box of kimchi, saying it was Juo's favorite and telling him to eat properly, even hugging him gently, which brought tears to Juo's eyes as he walked alone down the street, remembering her kind gesture and starting to blame himself, recalling how Yusin had mentioned her mom's illness in their past life, but he hadn't cared back then. And by the timeline, that must have been when the illness began. He'd always complained about not being understood, but had he ever truly cared about Eugene either? After Zuo left, Yusin tucked her mom into bed, but her mom said she wasn't sleepy and urged Yusin to go back because her son-in-law was still waiting for her at home, confusing Eugene once more as he insisted Juo was just a coworker. But then his mother guessed Juo's surname correctly, which was too uncanny, and she soon fell asleep while muttering to herself, talking about how ever since Eugene's father passed away, their son-in-law had been their only support, tutoring Eugene for free, fixing light bulbs and repairing the water heater, everything exactly matching Yuse's recurring dreams, leaving her speechless. The next day, Eugene was working at the bank counter when a thug repeatedly entered the wrong ATM pin, locking the card. An agent calmly explained that since the card belonged to his mother, he'd have to show proof of relation to unlock it. The thug got angry, claiming his face was proof enough and insisted he remembered the password 48s and demanded another try, but Yusin refused. Following procedure, not realizing her repeated phrasing gave the thug an opening to file a complaint at the oversight office, accusing her of leaking customer information. To calm things down, the bank manager invited the thug back and asked Yusin to apologize, but the thug acted smug, demanding 390-degree bows and an apology said aloud. Everyone thought it was too much, but Eugene didn't hesitate and followed through, leaving John Ho stunned when he later saw her in the break room, seemingly crying from the humiliation. But when he approached, he realized she was just eating and even invited him to join, which completely changed his view of her, admiring her mental strength. Later, she walked out patting her full stomach like nothing happened, and her bold, carefree nature charmed Young-ho, who started to look at her with new eyes. Seeing this, Jua warned him that married men should know their limits. But Young-ho replied he was single because 10 years ago when Ju-ho rushed to meet a VIP and stole his taxi, he missed his chance to stop his girlfriend from going abroad, and he's been single ever since. The next day, the drunk thug came back to cause trouble again. But this time, Yusian had learned her lesson and used subtle sign language to greet him instead of speaking. Enraged by the insult, the thug started a fight in the bank, and when John Ho tried to intervene, he was shoved to the floor. As things escalated, Eugene grabbed the thug's arm and twisted it, making him scream, then flipped him with a shoulder throw, leaving everyone stunned, including herself. At the company dinner that night, the manager praised her, calling it justified self-defense, and everyone asked if she was a martial artist. Embarrassed, Eugene admitted she used to work on the national security team, which shocked everyone and had them totally believing it until a younger colleague exposed that she and Young-ho were bluffing. Though their act was so seamless, it left everyone impressed. Even the manager suggested they should be a couple, but only Juho felt uneasy. That night, Juho's parents, who hadn't seen their son in ages, showed up unannounced out of worry. His father reminisced that the last time they came was for his wedding, and his mother quickly tried to cover up the awkward moment by heading to the fridge to check how their son had been living. Zuhuo invited his father to try the super comfy lounge chair, and for a moment, the family shared genuine joy. Just then, his wife, Juan, came home. The parents quickly stood up to greet her, but she looked awkward and gave her husband a sharp look, clearly annoyed he hadn't warned her about their visit. Tension rose as his mother-in-law subtly criticized the expensive groceries Hoiwan bought, suggesting they couldn't afford such a lifestyle, while Juan defended herself, saying quality of life mattered and that her family wasn't short on money. The conversation soured quickly, and Huiwan coldly offered to book a hotel for the in-laws before heading upstairs, clearly drawing a line. Furious, Juho stormed after her, snatched her phone, and demanded to know why she was being so rude to his parents. Juan snapped back that the real rudeness was them showing up uninvited. She didn't like strangers staying in her house. Hearing his parents leaving, Zuo rushed downstairs to stop them, but his father said it was their mistake to come unannounced. They didn't even feel worthy to stay at his parents' house, so she coldly suggested he go live at his sister's place instead. And seeing the disappointment in his parents' eyes, he felt heartbroken and helpless, especially since just yesterday he had asked his wife to return with him to visit his parents in the countryside. But she complained that the house was too small and uncomfortable, and now that his parents came to visit them in the city, they were turned away at the door. Why is it, he asked, that whenever her parents call, he must drop everything and go, but when his family shows up, they are met with closed doors? Hearing this, she exploded with anger, shouting that they had agreed to this before marriage, and if he didn't like it, he could return the car and apartment that her father had funded. Then she slammed the door and stormed out, walking down the street, fuming that he dared raise his voice at her, and he never imagined their honeymoon period would end so quickly. The cracks caused by their different upbringings starting to show, especially every time he saw her spending recklessly, swiping cards for food that she didn't even eat, letting it rot in the fridge while his ex would even eat expired leftovers. And in comparison, he and his ex truly felt like they came from the same world. Back then, he'd come home from work to cold frozen cakes, and now it was just reheated frozen steak, something equally tasteless and unfulfilling. And even gaming while lying on the couch started to lose its joy. But thankfully, his wealthy father-in-law didn't mind his humble beginnings and even helped him make business connections, introducing him to high society, and because he relied on others, he had to keep his head low. So the next day, he obediently apologized and coaxed his wife back home. She warned him that if he ever raised his voice at her again, she'd divorce him, then demanded a fragrant apology kiss to settle the argument. He complied, but his eyes revealed only exhaustion. That day, she went to the gym where a young, handsome man suddenly struck up a conversation, and before she could even react, his hands had gently landed on her shoulders from behind, staring at his charming face. Her heart skipped a beat, and the man enthusiastically guided her through her workout. And afterward, he offered to drive her home. She hesitated at first, but eventually followed him. And in the underground parking lot, he politely opened the car door for her. She joked that this must be where his girlfriend usually sits, not wanting to be misunderstood, but he replied that he didn't have a girlfriend, which made her secretly delighted as she stepped in. Once they reached her home, he snatched her phone, declared he'd be her personal trainer, and entered his number. And as he walked away, she couldn't stop her heart from fluttering. Meanwhile, her husband was on his way home from work when he saw his ex, Yoshan, stumble and fall. Rushing over, he saw she had injured her leg and insisted on driving her home. She thanked him sincerely, and when he returned, his wife had cooked steak. Yet, surrounded by all this rich food, he suddenly missed his mother-in-law's homemade pickled vegetables. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a selfie from the young trainer, making her panic as she quickly hid the phone beneath the table, but it kept vibrating until she excused herself to the restroom, while he opened the fridge and pulled out the pickles Yoan's mom had gifted him. One bite, and the familiar taste brought back all the memories. The next morning on their way to work, she noticed Yojin's work badge in the car, and when she asked, he hurriedly explained that it must have been left when he dropped off a coworker yesterday. Right then, her phone rang again with a good morning message from the young trainer, and now both husband and wife were hiding things from each other. That evening, Yoyan volunteered to cover for her colleagues and work late, and the husband, remembering how much she hated being hungry, stopped to buy her favorite seaweed rolls, even practicing what to say so it wouldn't sound forced. But when he arrived, she wasn't at her desk, and from the pantry came voices. So he crept over and saw she was already being cared for by another. Jong-ho had brought her a late-night snack filled with all her favorite foods, and when she thanked him for his kindness, he clarified that it wasn't just kindness, it was affection. Yeojun paused in surprise as he gestured to his outfit, and then she realized why he had asked earlier about her favorite foods and clothes. Understanding dawned, and she smiled knowingly. Jong-ho then directly asked if she'd consider dating him. Time seemed to freeze as the two men waited for her answer, and she joked that she didn't know him well yet. What if he was a psycho killer? The joke lightened the moment, and Jung-ho said he was willing to wait. Right then, her husband made a sound and was discovered. And in the awkward silence, he quickly explained he forgot something and snuck the seaweed roll away unnoticed. Days later, the bank arranged training at the headquarters and assigned Jong-ho to accompany Yeojun. And hoping to grow closer to her, he asked to borrow her husband's car. He was furious at the thought of someone using his car to chase his own wife and refused, but eventually gave in after much pleading. The next day, while playing golf with his rich father-in-law, he couldn't stop thinking about Jong-ho's sly smile in words, and seeing couples nearby made him picture Yeojun with him. So he rushed through lunch and took a taxi straight to the training venue, only to mistakenly interrupt a couple kissing, thinking it was her, just as Yeojun and Jong-ho walked past and caught him. She was confused why he was there, and he claimed he came to retrieve the car because his father-in-law's broke down, then said he'd sleep over and share a room with Youngsh. But since his father-in-law owned more than a dozen luxury cars, Jong-ho didn't buy the excuse. He dropped to his knees, begging him not to ruin his rare chance at love. But no matter how much he pleaded, her husband wouldn't leave. So they all went to dinner together. And though the conversation was casual, her husband always seemed to know exactly the right things to say. After all, Yeojun had been his wife in a past life. When the topic shifted to what kind of shows she liked, he smiled secretly. Sure, she'd say romantic dramas, but she surprised him by saying she loved comedies and only watched sad ones when she already felt like crying. This caught him off guard, and he remembered the time she asked him to attend her father's death anniversary, but he used work as an excuse not to go. Eugene, hiding his sorrow beneath a calm surface, always chose to watch tragic movies whenever he felt like crying, using the sadness on screen to mask his own pain. After countless arguments, this became his way of coping. He couldn't even remember how many nights he'd spent alone in the dark, crying silently with a movie as his only company. Learning the truth, Ji felt a wave of guilt crashing down on him, realizing that it was his neglect that had slowly turned the cheerful girl he once loved into someone he no longer recognized. Watching Eugene sleep, his heart filled with regret, as he recalled how she used to ask him to pat her head whenever she felt sad, saying it made her feel cared for, so unable to resist. He reached out and gently placed his hand on her head. Just then, Eugene woke up and Ju quickly pulled his hand back, awkwardly claiming there was something on her head. On his way back, he saw the homeless man on the subway and rushed after him, but the man mysteriously vanished around a corner. Meanwhile, Jun found herself thinking about the warmth of that head pat and the way it made her heart flutter unexpectedly. So, at the end of the workday, she stopped Jui, took his hand, and placed it on her head again, overwhelmed by that familiar and comforting feeling. Just then, Huiwan arrived to pick Ju up from work and saw the intimate scene, prompting Ju to quickly explain that there was something on Eugene's head to ease the awkwardness. Embarrassed, Eugene gave a brief greeting and left, confused as to why Jui made her feel so special. Back home, Jui felt guilty and tried to act sweet while Huiwan did yoga, but she warned him not to get too close to female co-workers, saying it would give other women the wrong idea. Juhi nervously agreed. The next day at work, Eugen started keeping her distance from him, knowing he was a married man. When the printer malfunctioned, she refused his help and began growing closer to Jung-ho instead. Seeing Jung-ho help others carry things, Eugene found him to be a kind man and decided to give his pursuit a chance. That evening, Jong-ho announced that Eugen had agreed to date him and that they were officially starting a relationship. Hearing this, he was devastated, unable to even offer a blessing, feeling like he had just handed his wife over to someone else. To celebrate Jung-ho's success, a friend suggested a spontaneous trip, and they all headed to a countryside villa. While everyone busied themselves preparing food, only Huiwan stayed by the air conditioner. When Ju saw that Eugene looked like she was catching a cold, he asked Huiwan to turn off the AC, but she ignored him, clearly hostile toward Eugene. That night, Eugene came down with a high fever. Juhi remembered that she needed a special fever medicine. Ordinary ones didn't work, so he ran from pharmacy to pharmacy, desperately searching for it. By the time he returned, Jung-ho had already driven her to the hospital. At the hospital, Eugene saw that Jong-ho had cut his arm while carrying her and was deeply moved. After receiving her IV drip, they drove back. And while Eugene slept, Jung-ho tried to unbuckle her seatbelt to make her more comfortable, only for Jui to catch them in what looked like a kiss. Realizing he still loved her, Juhi rushed to the bank, pulled out all his coins, and searched for one from 2006, determined to time travel back to the day he and Eugene had first met. But no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find the right toll booth. So he returned to the subway to find the homeless man who had once given him the magic coin. He begged the man to open the time portal again, admitting that he had failed to understand his wife, mocking her sadness and tragic movie habit, never realizing it was how she coped with pain. Even when she asked him to bring groceries home, it wasn't because she was lazy, it was because she had no time. But the man told him some mistakes cannot be undone, and that even going against fate is still fate. He urged Ji to accept reality and pursue happiness anew. Hearing this Jew, he knew there was no going back. He pulled out the 2006 coin he had finally found and tossed it away. Not just the coin, but also the past he had with Eugene. One day at work, he stopped Eugene, took a deep breath, and told her Young-ho was a good man, capable and responsible. Eugene thought he was trying to matchmake for his friend, unaware of how hard it was for Jui to say those words. At the same time, he resolved to face his life head-on, determined to be a good husband this time. When his wife woke up, he told him to sleep a bit longer because he had already made breakfast. Hu Yuan was surprised at how much her husband had changed overnight, touched by his sudden tenderness, though she didn't realize something was off. While folding clothes later, she heard Zhu's phone ringing. It was Eugen. When she picked up, Eugen's mother was on the other end, mistakenly calling him son-in-law before quickly hanging up, leaving Hu Yuan confused. She searched through Juhi's pockets and found a police station business card, confirming he had been there. Then, she checked his car's dash cam and discovered he had spent the entire night helping Eugene find her missing mother. Exhausted, Ju had returned home, climbed into bed, and sighed about how comfortable the big bed was. But before he could enjoy it, Juan stormed in and threw a memory card at him, knowing he couldn't hide the truth any longer. Ju, he tried to explain, but Juan already believed he and Eugene had something more, especially after hearing Eugene's mother call him son-in-law. Accusing him of having a second family, she tried to leave to confront Eugen herself, but he grabbed her arm and insisted nothing had happened. Huan countered that Eugene had a boyfriend, so why would she need his help at all? Their argument ended badly, and that night, Huyan poured her heart out to a younger man. Back home, staring at the memory card made her more suspicious, so she posted on the bank's internal website, accusing Eugen of having a boyfriend and still flirting with a married man, tarnishing the company's reputation. By the next day, the news had spread like wildfire, and online users began mercilessly criticizing Eugen. While the argument started over a suspicious post, so she called him to ask if he was the one who posted it. But Huoyuan denied everything, saying he didn't know anything. However, when he opened his computer, he was completely stunned. In a panic, he tried to delete the post, but after thinking about it, he convinced himself he hadn't said anything wrong and just shut the computer off. Feeling frustrated, he reached out to the young guy he'd been seeing and asked him to have dinner that evening, then called Jui to say he wouldn't be coming home. While on the call, he accidentally heard police sirens in the background and asked where Jui was. Jui said he was at the police station. Because the post had negatively affected the company, the bank director asked him and Yusin to report it to the authorities. Realizing this, Huoyuan frantically grabbed his phone, but found he couldn't delete the post this time, no matter what he did. So he and the young guy rushed to a nearby internet cafe and managed to delete it before the police tracked them down. But it was too late. The police still found out Huoyuan was the one who posted it. Eugene couldn't believe Huoyuan had framed him. Thinking about how Jui had helped him find his mother, Eugene decided not to press charges and told the police he would let it go. When Jui got home, he discovered the post history on their computer and couldn't believe that someone as kind as Huoyuan had become so selfish. He went to Eugene to apologize on Hoyan's behalf, and Eugene said he understood Hoyan's actions and asked Juha not to blame himself. One day, Juha got a call from his sister saying their mom was in the hospital for surgery. He wanted Juan to come with him, but Juan said he had an appointment at a difficult-to-book beauty clinic with his mother. Despite Juhi's pleading, Juan reluctantly went to the hospital, but wasn't really paying attention to his mother-in-law. After leaving some money, he asked Juha to drive him home. On the way, Juha said that after his mom was discharged, he wanted Huoyuan to stay at their home for a few days and show some filial respect, but Juan refused, and the two had a heated argument. Juan told him to stop the car and got out angrily. He thought Juho would chase after him, but Jua just drove off. After the argument, Ju returned to the hospital and unexpectedly ran into Yuan's mother, who was there for a follow-up checkup. The two older women hit it off right away and happily played cards together. Juhi's father sighed and said, "If only we could have a daughter-in-law as respectful to elders as Yuan." That night, Juha messaged Huoyuan to say he'd be staying at the hospital to take care of his mother. He and Ian watched TV in the hospital lobby, and their hands accidentally brushed, stirring feelings in both of them. Back in the ward, Eugene couldn't sleep, thinking about what had just happened and why he kept being drawn to Jua. At the same time, Jua lay restless on the sofa. The next day, Juan called Jua to remind him about his father's birthday party, but Jua insisted on taking his mother home first. Annoyed by the pressure, Juha turned off his phone as Hu Yuan kept calling. After settling his mother at home, he returned to find Hu Yuan waiting, furious about being ignored. Juhai in turn scolded him for being a wife who didn't even care when her mother-in-law had just come out of the hospital. The two fought again, and Juha finally confronted him about the slanderous post he had made about Yuan. Juan, deeply disappointed, said that Juha had changed and was no longer the man who used to follow him so obediently. Looking at their once sweet wedding photo, Hu Yuan completely gave up on the marriage. He left the picture on the table and decided to end the painful relationship. A few days later, a divorce agreement arrived at Juhai's office. Since the house and car had all been provided by his father-in-law, all Juho had left was a suitcase of belongings. He called Hu Yuan, hoping to make things right, but Hu Yuan was firm. He needed someone who put him first. Juhi, now homeless and broken, was taken in by his good friend Jong Ho. The next morning, Yuan told Jong Ho he had something to discuss after work, which made Jong Ho anxious all day. They had agreed to date for a month, and with just a few days left, he had a bad feeling because he always felt the effort he gave wasn't returned equally. Ju, knowing the truth, didn't want his friend to get hurt, so he kept trying to comfort him. Poor Yang, who, desperate not to be dumped early, invited Eugene to dinner and arcade games to enjoy their final moments together. But fate couldn't be avoided. Ejin told him he couldn't continue the relationship because his heart was always elsewhere. John-Hoo pretended to smile and said it didn't matter, but he went home and got completely drunk, cursing the home-wrecking third party with his friend, unaware that the third party was standing right there beside them. The next day, Ju-ha found Eugene on the rooftop and urged him to reconsider Jong-ho, saying he really liked him. But Eugene said he knew his own heart and would not continue with Jong-ho. As for the ambiguous things that had happened between them recently, if Ju found them awkward, he should just forget them. They didn't realize Young-ho had overheard everything. Back home, he punched Yua and demanded to know why he had done this. Ju felt guilty and wanted to explain that he and Ween were entangled because they had been a couple in a past life, but the words wouldn't come out. Who would believe such a thing? Ashamed, he couldn't bear to stay at Young-ho's house and began packing his things, but the suitcase fell apart and scattered everything. Just then, John-ho came over and picked up his things for him, unable to watch his friend fall so low, though things were no longer as joyful as they once were. Now that Ju-ho was isolated and rejected, he applied for a transfer to a rural branch. When Young-ho found out, he felt awful, and Yuin too was filled with guilt. That night, Eugene once again dreamed of his past life, but this time he clearly saw the man's face. It was Jua. He rushed to find Jua in the middle of the night and asked why he kept appearing in his dreams, why everything felt so real. Seeing Eugene in pain, Jui finally told him everything about traveling through time, how they had fallen in love, gotten married, had 2 adorable children, and how their once sweet love had become full of pain and fights, which led him to escape through time. Eugene couldn't accept it and ran home to ask his mother why she felt something strange the first time she met Ju. But to his surprise, his mentally unstable mother had become unusually calm and told her daughter not to blame Juhei, because she too had come from the past. Eugene finally began to believe Juhei's words and confronted him again, asking why, if they were truly husband and wife. Ju, who chose to escape through time rather than face him. Jua explained that after marriage, Eugen had become unpredictable and violent, often physically attacking him. The stress of work and life overwhelmed him, and he didn't want to live that way forever. By chance, he traveled back in time and stopped their original meeting, changing their fate. Now he understood it was his own failure to consider Eugen's feelings that transformed the once gentle and kind wife into a terrifying monster. He knelt before Eugene, begging for forgiveness. This timeline's Eugene, lacking memories of a past life, did not believe Jui abandoned him. He said a bad marriage was the fault of both, and if Juho felt guilty, he should win him back again. Back at the company, Juho was distracted and worried, but Young-ho comforted him, refusing to watch his good friend give up on himself, encouraging him to follow his heart without hesitation. He no longer blamed him. Hearing this, Jui was pained, recalling every moment shared with Yojin, realizing he still loved him deeply. That very night, Jua visited Yojin's home to confess his intent to rekindle their love and make up for lost time. Thus, their bond from the previous life was renewed. Jua took Yojin to the beach where they first dated, but Yojin felt no connection. Though hearing Juhei's stories of their past sweetness still filled him with happiness, as they enjoyed themselves, Juhei received an urgent call from the bank's president, summoning him immediately. During his divorce disputes, his wealthy father-in-law had introduced a massive $6 billion loan deal. The branch manager trusted the JK Group's recommendation and approved the loan without proper checks. Unexpectedly, the company declared bankruptcy as soon as the loan was dispersed. The money disappeared, and after being questioned by headquarters, the branch manager was fired. However, Yugen remained unaffected by the incident. Jua hurried to confront his father-in-law, only to overhear him on the phone with the fleeing boss, revealing the business was already failing and that the father-in-law had been fully aware from the start. When discovered, the father-in-law told Jua to pretend ignorance and let the branch manager bear full responsibility. Otherwise, both would be held accountable. After a night of thought, Ju decided to report the truth to headquarters. Eventually, the financial tycoon was summoned for investigation. Though unaware of the full story, Jua was dismissed for suspected conflicts of interest due to his status as JK Group's son-in-law. Meanwhile, Huiyuan suffered as well. While shopping, he overheard a familiar voice discussing him. It turned out the young idol's interest was merely to become a wealthy tycoon's son-in-law. Huiyuan was furious, beating the young man with his bag before storming off, realizing the idol was not a rich second generation at all, driving expensive stolen cars. Now homeless again, Jui wandered until he met the time-traveling uncle at a subway station. After hearing a situation, the uncle handed him a newspaper saying, "Tonight was another chance to travel through time and change everything." But Juha had lost hope and refused the offer, instead going to the beach to reflect. Meanwhile, Eugene, unable to reach Jua, worried deeply. Suddenly, he remembered the beach where they once dated and headed there to search. But his mother called him back, handing him a coin from 2006 and telling him the opportunity was rare. Eugene understood immediately. His mother revealed she had traveled through time to save his father from a fatal accident, but failed due to her infirmity, entrusting him with this mission. Now, Eugene found Juhei and told him no matter what happens, they would face it together. However, Zuho believed he was a curse bringing misfortune to those around him, and once again proposed breaking up. Eugene was speechless. Realizing he must rewrite his fate alone, he drove to the time-traveling gas station, skeptically tossing the coin. As expected, the barrier lifted. Jua caught up, knowing that to free himself from Yugen's burden, he had to retain memories of their past and travel with him. As the gate closed, Jua accelerated, escaping the toll and matching Yugen's speed. Both cars sped at 200 mph per free, disappearing into the night. Time rewound, Ju returned to his college rental in summer while Eugene woke on his home couch, noticing bangs on his forehead. His mother urged him to hurry to school. Looking at the calendar, Eugene realized he had indeed traveled back. He asked about his father, and his mother said he had gone on a business trip early that day, likely at the airport. Rushing out, Eugene ran to stop his father from boarding the plane, hugging him tightly and refusing to let go. The father had to call his boss to send a colleague instead. At the airport, Eugene saw the 10 years ago Young-ho pleading with his girlfriend not to leave. Eugene purposely bumped into the girl, buying time for Jung-ho to propose, and the couple embraced happily. Seeing Young-ho's happiness in this life, Eugen's guilt faded. Next, he went to the bus stop where he first met Ju, but saw no sign of him. Ju-hee had hidden in the rental to avoid their meeting. Yu-gen found Shang-ji at school, learned Ju he was at the rental, and asked him to take him there. On the way, they met Huen, who said she wanted to find Yua to attend a concert together. Learning Ju-ha was unwell at the rental, Hwan said to wait for another time, changing their plans and preventing future stories. Shang-ju called Ju-ha, telling him a pretty girl was looking for him. Upon learning it was Yao Zhen, Jua fled the rental but was soon caught. They squeezed into the same taxi and Juha explained they could not meet, but Yugen said he was confident. As they worked to strengthen their relationship, seeing how determined Eugene was, Juga took the chance to escape from the car. During their chase, a motorcycle suddenly sped toward Euhen, and to protect him, Juga got tangled up with him again because the past had been changed when Ewan woke up. This time, it was already 2018. His mother was no longer suffering from dementia, but was now working as a receptionist at a sales company. Ian felt relieved that he had changed his mother's fate. He asked about his father and learned that his father had passed away 3 years ago. Though saddened, he found comfort hearing that his father died peacefully. Urgently, Eugene went to the bank headquarters and applied to be transferred to the same branch where Juga worked. On that very day, the bank manager approached Juga, wanting to set him up with a match. Juga declined, saying he wasn't interested in dating right now. After Juga left, Yusen quickly stood up and confessed to everyone that he liked Juga, hoping his colleagues could help bring them together. This made everyone excited, and afterward people intentionally or unintentionally tried to pair them up. Juga asked Young-ho about this and was shocked to find out that Eugen had publicly declared his feelings. Feeling helpless, Juga endured the awkwardness. But during a company dinner, the manager teased Juga again, insisting he sit next to Eugene, which made Juga finally lose his temper, leaving everyone uncomfortable. Ejun felt hurt and angry, knowing Juga kept distance to protect him, but unrequited love eventually actually causes pain. He found Jong-ho again, asking if there was any chance for them to be together. If not, he would try to forget and bury those memories. Seeing Suga silent, Eugene left sadly while Suga grew afraid of losing him. From then, Eugene kept distance, and colleagues understood he was hurt, so they stopped mentioning the two. One day, Suga saw Eugene waiting for the bus on his way to work. Just then, an ambulance passed by, triggering memories from Suga's past life. On the radio, he heard a truck had rear-ended a bus, killing all passengers. Worried for Ewan's safety, Juga chased after the scene and saw the truck driver distracted. He honked loudly to warn, but the driver didn't notice and a crash was imminent. Juga forced the truck to stop, then saw Eugene safely get off the bus. He realized how deeply he feared losing him and tightly embraced him. After many twists and turns, they finally came together. 3 years later, after 3 time travels, they understood each other better. Jugo, once selfishly worried only about being late, now willingly took responsibility for caring for their child. Though busy, their life was happy. After finally sending the child to school, Eugene realized they were about to be late. Arriving at work, each pretended to pour coffee with a paper cup and then went to their desks, but got caught by Young-ho. Jong-ho, no longer single, focused all his energy on work and had become Juga's team leader. Seeing the family photo on Young-ho's desk, Juga felt comforted knowing Young-ho hadn't lost his happy family because of him. That day, the manager brought good news. Ewan's team leader got promoted, and Eugene himself, due to outstanding performance, would take over the leader position. Seeing Eugene's promotion, Zuga felt happy, but worried Eugene might be upset because he didn't get promoted. Yet, Juga was unaffected and told Eugene to focus on his new challenges and leave family matters to him. That evening, Jong-ho confided in Juga about marital troubles, complaining his wife was quick-tempered and they argued over trivial things. Seeing Young-ho, Juga recalled his own past and shared his 3 life experiences, advising him to understand and tolerate his wife and to see things from her perspective, because how a woman turns out depends on the man she marries. Jong-ho admired Zuga's words and promised to communicate better with his wife. That day, Zuga faced an important moment. The company decided to let him take a promotion exam and gave him training materials to prepare. Hearing this, Eugene cheered for him. On exam day, Yusen, who should have picked up their child from school, encountered an elderly man fainting at work. He called an ambulance and forgot about the child. The teacher, unable to reach him, called Juga, who was just entering the exam hall. Juga called Eugene, but got no answer, so he asked Jong-ho to pick up the child. Jong-ho was busy discussing work and didn't notice the call. Juga gave up on the exam and went to get the child. Meanwhile, Eugene saw Juga's missed calls and texts and finally remembered. He called Juga and they agreed to meet at the school gate. Only then did Juga understand Eugene's hardship. After handing the child to Yusan, Juga rushed to the exam site and just made it in time. He passed and got promoted as Hope. Everyone came to congratulate them. Ajun even gave Juga the game console he had longed for. Their friends envied Juga for marrying such a great wife. Ajun's mother often helped look after the child, easing their lives. They often went to the movies, strolled in the park, reminiscing about the past and dreaming of their child's future. After 3 times entanglements, the traveling couple finally lived happily together. Marriage has its ups and downs, but all they could do was hold hands and bravely walk forward together.